Welcome back to another video. I'm Pam Fergus. We're going to be covering Shrine Maidens, Ice Fairies, and Isometric Grids today with Fantasy Maiden Wars Complete Box. Recently, a fan patch dropped hot off the presses that works as a partial menu patch from Japanese to English. If you have any experience with Fire Emblem or Super Robot Wars, you should fit right in at home with Fantasy Maiden Wars Complete Box. Fantasy Maiden Wars, you follow the stories of the mainline Touhou games mixed together in a blender with new ingredients thrown in to add in a little bit of extra spice. For several earlier Fantasy Maiden Wars games, Complete Box works like a compilation and update of those earlier entries. In Fantasy Maiden Wars, you send your characters like Reimu, Marissa, Chirno, and various other members out to go give the enemy maidens, fairies, vampires, or what have you that threatens Gensokyo a tactical beatdown. You're going to be investing in various attributes like throwing out wife points or upgrading various stats to improve your characters and show favoritism. Just like in real life, your best players can be thrown fat stacks of currencies so they do a better job. Now, don't worry too much as far as things like permadeath or lack of diversity of options. Despite being a fan game, Fantasy Maiden Wars has multiple difficulty settings as well as 2 different routes for Reimu and Marissa, similar to how Super Robot Wars handles picking a different real focused and super focused protagonist. Now, all of the girls have different special skills that they can swap out, so you can customize your maidens to your liking, such as Yomu gaining the ability to perfect parry after enough combats, or have better evade and accuracy when adjacent to foes. And there's always overall a lot of variability in skills, so it should be pretty easy to find a set to match whatever you're aiming to do with your given team, adding a pretty hefty chunk of replay value to the game. Now, combat in Fantasy Maiden Wars occurs by selecting various attacks for your unit, and then watching the various attack animations that each character has. Most characters have several attacks that they can pick from various ranges or effects. Some of the attacks can't be used if your unit doesn't have enough power, which is gained from being involved in combat and enemy units being killed, while other attacks are prevented if the character isn't focused. The character may toggle from non-focused to focused status at will to enable other attacks and easier handling of Danmaku. In addition to being able to use attacks, you can use various spirits, such as in Super Robot Wars, that can grant various effects, like moving further, gaining more evasion, hit rate, or even doubling your damage. A large number of the bosses in the game will go through spell cards that you have to navigate, which have various different effects. You're able to capture these spell cards via defeating the boss before the spell card timer runs out. Most of the bosses will have different charge attacks, so when they're in the spell card, and some might function differently than others. So the bosses tend to be less static than what you'd experience in Super Robot Wars or Fire Emblem through these different phases. You can upgrade your characters using wife points and normal point currency. Now you might be thinking, whoa, you get to wife your characters? Is Touhou Yuri dating sim? No, sadly, it's more of a favoritism system. You can't make the girls date each other. You can gain wife points after each mission, and they can be used to improve all of the characters' stats at once, but they're rarer. So your normal points or your more limited forms of upgrade for units are gained by killing enemy foes or fulfilling bonus objectives. Now, lastly, as far as gameplay features go, we have the various types of equipment that your characters can gain. Each character has varying amounts of slots for equipment, and this is typically a static amount for that character. These can range from HP to energy regen to one-time usable items. And with that, we've covered pretty much the basic components of gameplay in Fantasy Maiden Wars. Now that we're done talking about how the game plays, it's worth talking about how much English is during the patch and how playable is it for someone with limited and no understanding of Japanese. Now, if you're familiar with other Fantasy Maiden Wars games that have previously had complete patches, or Super Robot Wars, it should be relatively easy to play with the current English patch. If you're newer to the series, it will take some getting adjusted to as a large portion of the menus are untranslated, and it's not inherently obvious what everything does without prior experience. Now, personally, coming from an experience level, I've played multiple Super Robot Wars games in Japanese with a relatively low level knowledge of the language. I was able to play without any major issues. So what can a player expect in terms of progression, and how much content does the game have? You can expect a massive amount of content, both in terms of roster and the ways you can play through or accomplish the content. There are around 70 stages in total, the length of varying lengths. Many of these bosses are long multi-stage battles that serve as a climax of a given story arc, and significantly longer with multiple fights and different progression points. You also have specific stage requirements that act as bonus objectives in order to put a little bit more of a challenge as a cherry on top. On top of all this, you'll be able to do other side scenarios or bonus content or a New Game Plus. Now, holding up as a game better than its combined inspirations and as an SRPG in its own right, Fantasy Maiden Wars is more than just Touhou fan service on top of some Super Robot Wars mechanics. If you like SRPGs and want to prepare your girls to fight, then check out Complete Box, which is now on PC with its partial English patch, or the new Nintendo Switch version, just released in Japanese. As always, thanks again for checking the video and check back again for more content.